Here with reaction to President Biden's performance during the G7 summit and a look ahead to his meeting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, Kansas Republican Senator Roger Marshall. He is a member of the Health Committee, Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, as well as the Energy Committee. Senator, what kind of a grade would you give the president thus far on his first overseas trip?
Well, John, maybe a C minus. The good news is no major gaffes. He's not going to be on Saturday Night Live this weekend, but yet his priorities just seem to not fit what Americans think is important. His emphasis, the G7's emphasis right now, is unproven, expensive environmental policy that puts China first and America last. And instead, I think we should be focusing on a strong world economy, focusing on the origins of the coronavirus, and focusing on how do we stand up to China. So I'm very concerned about the priorities that they're walking out of this meeting with.
But the G7 collectively did issue a kind of a very public rebuke to China, talking about their use of forced labor in Xinjiang, talking about their encroachment on Taiwan, their treatment of Hong Kong. It was some pretty tough language coming out of the G7 regarding China.
Well, what my old track coach used to say, talk is cheap, right? So what we're looking for are actions. What type of actions are we going to do to hold them accountable? So on the one hand, we open up a environmental policy that makes China rich and punishes the United States. We do environmental policy that helps Russia but hurts the United States. So I'm much more interested in their actions right now. I just don't have a lot of faith in the G7. I probably have more faith in the Quad, Japan, Australia, working with us, trying to make sure that we nail down some really, really solid policy. In India, of course, too, working on policy to contain China.
Why is it that China is still treated as a developing nation when it is the world's second largest economy? It could overtake the United States not that far into the future. And, they have developed to the point where they are not the China of Mao Zedong, put it that way.
Yeah, John, maybe you could go negotiate on our behalf when we meet with the World Trade Organization. Part of the problem we're having on the southern border right now goes back to when China was admitted to the WTO. I've done some mission work down in Central America and Mexico, been the border 3 times. And really the start of the fall of the economy in Central America was when all the jobs left Central America for China, making T-shirts, tennis shoes, those types of things. I just saw dozens of empty manufacturing plants there. So you're absolutely right. This is their free ticket, too, on any type of Green New Deal, on the Paris Climate Accords as well. They get a free pass, puts American producers at a disadvantage.
The president is going to be meeting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday. Everybody's looking forward to that meeting. A lot of people want the president to talk tough to Putin, but the president seemed to be suggesting even talking tough might not help change things. Listen to what President Biden had to say.
First of all, there's no guarantee you can change a person's behavior. If I respond in kind, which I will, that it doesn't dissuade him. Russia has engaged in activities which we believe are contrary to international norms, but they have also bitten off some real problems they're going to have trouble chewing on.
Bitten off some real problems they're going to have trouble chewing on. I mean, they seized Crimea and the world didn't seem to bat an eye.
Right. So I'm concerned that our president is walking into a meeting with the most powerful, one of the most brutal dictators in the world, and he's walking in there from a position of weakness. If you sit there and you're Vladimir Putin and you're looking at the national security situation for the United States, you think about 2 huge weaknesses, our southern border, as well as the cyber attacks that are going on. And then Putin sat there and he looks and says, think how China just dissed President Obama back in 2016 at the China airport tarmac. And then China basically face-slapped us in Alaska again. And then we hand over the keys to the energy kingdom to Russia as well. So we're not going in there with a position of strength. I'm very, very, very concerned about our president. This really gives my heart pause as he steps in there. And lastly, here's a president that's afraid to take questions from our national media, and he's going to sit down with a powerful, brutal dictator, very experienced, very shrewd. Does our president have the courage to stand up and hold Russia accountable?
You mentioned the southern border. Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio was on with Maria Bartiromo this morning and gave his assessment of the administration's performance on the southern border. Listen.
Look, Joe Biden won't go to the border. Kamala Harris won't go to the border. When Secretary Mayorkas did go to the border, he wouldn't let the press in because they don't want the country to fully understand just how serious this situation is and what is actually happening to these people who, as Mr. McClintock pointed out, Maria, are being trafficked and then having to send money back to these organized crime, these terrible cartels.
It's not just the problem of the moment. Are we not creating a problem for the future with millions potentially of undocumented people and the cartel enrichment that comes with the human smuggling that's been going on?
Right. Jim Jordan nailed it. John, you've nailed it as well. This is a crisis at the border in so many ways, a national security crisis, a healthcare crisis as well. Just humanitarian crisis, the sex trafficking, the drugs crossing the border. And someday soon, we're going to have more people crossing the border with COVID virus than spontaneous infections out in the rest of the United States as well. This is a problem that continues to grow. Could you imagine your hometown where you grew up in, and I don't know where that is, John, but if we would just bring to you about 5,000 or 10,000 people every day by the busload and ask your community to take care of these folks. Look, the United States has a great compassionate heart, but the Biden administration turn this faucet on and they can turn it off just as easily, but they want this crisis. They want this problem. They see these as future voters, and it kind of makes us say you're focused on some of these problems, the border crisis. Meanwhile, back in Washington, D.C., the president's trying to borrow $8 trillion from your grandchildren, trying to rig the elections. So many challenges going on up here in D.C. as well, but the Democrats want this crisis at the border.
Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. I grew up in your neighboring state of Colorado, so good to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, John.